Hello world, it's Travis Bowlin. Today on Kit Fit we'll be building an AM radio kit. The first thing I want to do is take a look at these instructions. They are very heavily detailed, and if you follow them step by step, this project is almost foolproof. Let's go over the parts. We have a PCB board, we have some solder, we have all our resistors and diodes and semiconductors, as well as a speaker and a dial, a volume on and off switch, the antenna, battery pack, the tuner, the motherboard chip, as well as some bits and pieces of wire and nuts and bolts. You'll need a soldering iron, some snips, a screwdriver, some needle nose pliers, a battery, and some way to keep your PCB board lifted up so you can solder. I just use this little dough. The first thing we're going to want to do is to install the two diodes. They are marked D1 and D2 on the package, as well on the PCB board. You can see here I'm getting ready to use this dough to raise this board up so I'm able to solder. I ended up using some of my own flux, which helps the solder joint flow smoothly. This solder that they provided was supposed to have flux in it, but I don't believe it was very good. Once you have those soldered, we'll move to installing the R4 unit. This is the resistor that's got the brown, green, and brown gold stripes on it. Once you have that soldered into place, we'll move to piece R2, which is our resistor labeled orange, orange, red, gold. And like I said, the instructions are very detailed with photos, and the PCB board is well labeled to match the instructions. Now we're going to install part IC1. This is going to be our integrated circuit. Once again, I'm going to add some flux to where I'm going to solder. This just helps your solder joint flow smoothly, and you can guarantee that you have a good solder joint. Once you have that soldered into place, we'll move on to part R1. This is another resistor labeled brown, black, gold, yellow. Once you have that nicely soldered, we're going to move on to part C1. This is our 0.01 microfarads disc cap. Then we'll move on to installing C3, which is our 0.047 microfarad disc cap. Now we're going to install C5, C4, and C8. These are our 10 microfarad electrodes. Now it's important to match these up, positive and negative. The electrode normally has a negative line on itself, and the PCB board would normally have a plus sign, so you'll be able to match it up that way. Once you have that soldered in, we're going to go ahead and get piece C9. This is our 0.047 microfarads disc cap. We're going to go ahead and solder that into place. Once you have that soldered into place, we're going to go grab our last two resistors, R5 and R6. R5 is gray, red, red, gold, and R6 is brown, black, black, gold. We're going to go ahead and solder those into place. Next, we're going to take part IC, the 8-pin, as well as its little motherboard holder, the IC2, and we're going to mount those into place and stick them together, matching up the pins as well as the notch that's on the PCB board. Then you can solder it into place. Next, we're going to install part C6. This is our 470 microfarads electrode. Remember to line up plus and minus on this. And once you have that soldered into place, we'll move on to our last component on this piece of cardboard. It's C7, another 470 microfarads electrode. Remember to line up positive and minus. Here I'm demonstrating using my snips to get off the excess wire. The next step I'm going to do is install our potentiometer. This is for volume and on and off, and I'm going to utilize figure G in the instructions to mount this. Once you have that lined up in place, you can mount the nut and the washer to hold it in place. Once again, prepare for soldering by adding a little flux on the solder joints. Once you have that soldered into place, we're going to go ahead and mount our tuning capacitor. This will help us dial in our radio stations. Once you get that seated in the PCB board, you can mount it with the 2 screws and then prepare it for soldering. Before soldering, I went ahead and installed the dial onto the capacitor and mounted it with the screw that goes right in the center of it. Then it was time to solder the tuning capacitor to the PCB board. Once I had that soldered, I installed the sticker here that indicates what channel you're on. There's a line on the PCB board. When you stick this sticker on there, that line in the channel 1600 should line up. Now it's time to mount our speaker. We're going to use the sticky adhesive that they've provided. We're going to peel one end off and stick it on the speaker, then peel the other end off and mount it onto the PCB board. Once you have that in place, we're going to take 2 of these lead wires that they provided and we're going to prepare them for soldering, putting one end on plus and minus of the speaker and then the other ends on plus and minus on the PCB board. Once you have the speaker mounted, we're going to take our battery pack and we're going to line up the pins with plus and minus on the PCB board and go ahead and give them a nice solder. There is a mounting nut and bolt in the center of the battery pack. Next, we're going to install the antenna. There's 2 little plastic clips that seat down into the PCB board and then they turn to lock into place. Once you have those into place, you can just mount the antenna like so. And through here, I'm just adding the knob to the potentiometer. Next, we're going to prepare the wires from the antenna to be soldered on the PCB board. Green wire goes into hole 1, red in hole 2, blue in hole 3, and white in hole 4. And here I'm soldering the 4 wires that come from the antenna onto the PCB board. They line up right next to the battery, so I did undo the bolt and the nut and tilted it up just a little bit so I could reach. And there you're done. Make sure you check all your solder joints and that none are rubbing together or stuck together, because that will short it out. And it's pretty easy. Now let's play it and rate it.
So while other companies might Eon Johnson, who tonight at 6 o'clock, Job and ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day.
Overall, I give this kit a 10. It's very easy, detailed instructions, everything you need is there, and it's very rewarding to have a finished product and have a working radio. So I suggest you pick this up if you want to get better at soldering. Thanks for watching the Kit Pit. Subscribe now for the latest videos.